Beth.
Hi, Pastor Doug. How are you?
I'm good. I got some of my favorite... Oh, you've got some bouncy balls too.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's more.
Can I put that? Perfect. Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh.
You're doing good.
Yeah? What? I'm just... can't quite... I'm losing a few.
You're losing.
Sorry.
It's a good thing we're here today.
It is a good thing we're here today.
We are going to be talking about the story of Mary and Martha.
Mary and Martha.
And balancing our work and our time with God.
Ah, the bouncy balls. There's many wonderful good things in life, and sometimes it's a balancing act.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time it's a balancing act.
Yes, it is.
So our story of Mary and Martha comes from the book of Luke, which is in the New Testament.
Yes.
Chapter 10. And let's get right into it. What was going on? Why were all these people coming to Mary's house, Mary and Martha's house?
Well, Jesus had just been up the mountain praying and was transfigured. And as he came down off the mountain with his disciples, it says that he turned his face toward Jerusalem. He knew what he had to do. And he sent out 70 of his disciples to go out and cure people and to spread the good news of God's love for all people, this sacrificial love. And so a lot of people started following not only Jesus, but the disciples back to find this Jesus who had this message of good news, of God's love for everyone. And so when Jesus and the disciples came to Mary and Martha's, there was a big crowd. There was a lot of people that were in tow, as it were. So, of course, Mary and Martha were there to welcome their friend Jesus. And as we know the story all too well, Martha is busy, trying to not only make a meal for their friend Jesus, but probably all the disciples and some of their friends. My guess is there were a lot of folks. And Martha was feeling the pressure to prepare something, get something ready for all these people. And of course, we see Mary sitting at Jesus' feet.
Okay, so someone like me looking at this story, I would think, okay, that's pretty normal. If there were a ton of people coming to my house, I would want to show hospitality and get a meal ready, and we need to take into consideration back in that time, there were no refrigerators, no stoves, no convenience food, no freezer to have things prepared, and the day started out with grinding wheat to make flour to bake bread. It was no...
carrying water up from the river. It was no easy task.
No easy task.
And so the contrast of the story is that Martha is really doing what women of Jesus' day were called to do. Mary, on the other hand, was actually really stepping out of line, out of traditional boundaries for women. It was only disciples, only men, who were really allowed to sit at the foot of a teacher to be and become a disciple. By listening to the teachings. And so Mary was really overstepping her bounds, and so Martha, by good reason, had a right to speak up and say, Jesus, tell Mary to help me. And of course Jesus says to Martha twice, which shows not just a rebuke of Martha, but shows an intimacy and a real caring for Martha, and saying, Martha, Martha, Mary has chosen the right thing at this time. Doesn't mean what Martha was doing was not important, but it is, as Jesus says, Mary has chosen the more important thing than to be loaded down with all the busyness and worry that you are having.
So it's not like there was a right thing and a wrong thing. It was more of a good choice and a better choice.
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah, it's a priority thing, and of course we here in our world and society and lives today can identify with having to prioritize. I mean, in this day and age of soccer and football games and activities on Sundays, you know, do you wake up and go to church, or do you go watch the football game, or go to the soccer practice, or, you know, it's all priorities and choices. And it's not to saying that one is good and one is bad, but you know, maybe there's a place for prayerful consideration of what is important at that moment of that day in your busy schedule in life. So that's kind of what's at stake here in the story of Mary and Martha.
Yeah, Christ wants our heart to be centered in Him, and for us to make those, make the better choices. It's not, and both sisters wanted to serve Him. In fact, the story of the Good Samaritan.
Yeah, it's leading up to, it's right before this this encounter. The Good Samaritan story would have you believe that really it's in serving another person that you really show your love of God for that person. When the Samaritan is the one where the man is beaten up and is lying dead by the side of the road. And I love the part of the story where it's actually a priest that sees this man and decides not to help, walks on the other side of the road. You know, my thinking is, boy, you know, that priest is probably saying, I need to get to church. It's more important for me to get to church than to help out this person and maybe defile myself so that I can't do my job at the church. Well, you know, Jesus points out in this case that, you know, the better thing or the right thing to do is to help someone in need, and not to be so focused on, I got to get to church, you know. So, and then here it seems to flip itself on its head and say, you know, no, Mary sitting at my feet listening to my word is more important than the busyness that Martha is overwhelmed with.
Right.
So, I love the memory verse, be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46, verse 10a. Be still and know that I am God. In our busy lives, sometimes that's so hard to do, to take time, to take a moment, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and to just really have that prayerful, meditative time to listen to God.
With the open heart.
Open heart.
With an open heart.
Yes.
And ready to receive. Yeah. And that's what this rotation is all about, is like, how do we do that balance?
Yeah.
How do we have all these important things in our life, and how do we do that balance? So, these are the things that we're going to focus on with kids. These are the concepts. So we're going to recognize the importance of listening for God and what He might have to say to us. That God does not want us to be too busy for Him. Making time for God is the most important thing that we can do, that we can choose to do.
I think it was Martin Luther who used to always carve out an hour of time in the morning to pray and meditate and listen to what God wanted him to do. And I think it was Luther that was known to say, I have so much to do today, I better spend 2 hours in the morning with God. Yeah. And also, when we show hospitality to others, we are showing hospitality to God. Yeah, absolutely.
Our objectives are to know that for children to know that the story takes place in the New Testament, in the Gospels, to be able to find the story, and to be able to recall the events in their own words, to be able to share the story, to learn about home life in Bible times. Oftentimes kids, they don't understand what it meant to cook a meal, and we're going to take a look at that. And understand the importance of taking time to sit at God's feet, to listen to God's word, and then discuss balance in our busy lives, and how do we take time to be with God. So, our schedules always have this information, but I want to highlight for all of us this particular rotation. The first part of our schedule shows which workshops kids are going to go to, and the second shows a little blurb that you could read at home with your kids and talk to with your kids. and then it shows which dates, where they're going on those dates. So our first workshop is our games workshop, and we're going to be playing a game of four corners where kids have to make choices. And there's no right choice or wrong choice, but it's getting them to think about the choices they make. And then in our computer workshop this time, we're actually going to be able to take a look at real life pictures today of Mary and Martha's house. And kids will get to see what it looked like and think about, you know, how many people might have been in there, and how would have you prepared a meal? How would all that work?
Yeah, a little different than today.
That'll be exciting. They'll really like that. And then in the kitchen, we're going to be looking at hospitality again, and how when you have something come up, like if there's a holiday or an event coming up, how do you structure your time and your preparations, or how do you structure that Sabbath time? You know, does everybody pitch in and do a little bit so that even the person who's hosting or preparing gets a time to rest? And then our art workshop, kids are going to be making a two-sided clay rock, and they're going to be making petroglyph designs. And one side will represent their most favorite activity to do, and the other side will represent their time with God. And then it will be a reminder to them, like if you're doing one, you can't be doing the other. So it's like, how do you balance that? So on our This Week at Home section, it's going to be referring you to our faith journal sheets. And faith journal sheets come home from the workshops each week. These are all on our website too, which is www.gloriadaykids.org. And this is for our art workshop. And so kids will get a chance to put their whole schedule for the week on here, and then be able to put their time, plug their times in that they are planning to spend time with God. And this could...
Can I get one of those?
Yes.
Thanks.
I know, I need one too. Yep.
Wonderful. And I really like your faith practice questions too, talking about different sheet that looks like this on the cover and has...
And here's the back.
Yeah, thank you. Anyway, just to get families to think about, you know, how do I spend time with God in the different parts of our faith walk? And so, really good stuff.
Yeah, so questions about worship, reading God's Word, prayer, giving, serving, encouraging, inviting, and being still.
Not easy for either of us,
No, I know.
Well, it's going to be a great rotation. Mary and Martha, Luke 10, 38 to 42. Great story and some good learning experiences there.
Thanks, Pastor Doug.
Thanks, Beth. We'll see you at Sunday school and
in church.